from the chapter How Do Organisms Reproduce? Class 10. So, we're going to discuss today the importance of variation. So, in my last video, we discussed about variation and all. So, now the DNA copying during reproduction is important for maintaining the body designs of different organisms to survive in the existing environment. Seems a bit confusing, right? Don't worry, I'll explain you now. So DNA copying during reproduction. So when does this DNA copying mechanism happens? During reproduction. Okay, during especially sexual reproduction. Okay, so it is important for maintaining the body design. Okay, so why is this DNA copying very important during reproduction? To maintain the body design. So you can see the cow give rise to a calf. So the body design is very same. Humans give rise to their own offsprings, the children. So they also have like two hands, two legs, one head, and everything the same. So to maintain the body design, DNA copying during reproduction takes place. So this is very important. So this happens in different organisms to survive in the existing environment. So why this is happening? For their existence, for their survival in the environment. So I repeat it again. DNA copying during reproduction is important for maintaining the body designs of different organisms to survive, to live in the existing environment. I hope you understood. But the environment is constantly changing due to changes in temperature, climate, water levels, etc. So, what happens to the environment? So, billions and millions of years ago, maybe the temperature was very low, or maybe the temperature was very high. So these organisms, due to this, because of DNA copying mechanism happening during reproduction, so what do they see? They see a little bit of variation, changes. So these changes actually help them. As we can see, there could be changes in temperature. It could be an increase in temperature or decrease in temperature. The climate also, and the water levels also. Sometimes what happens is the water level rises and sometimes the water level decreases to a lot. But still, the organisms have to adjust with these variations. So this DNA copying mechanism, so actually during reproduction, it helps the organisms to adjust to the changing temperature, it could be, the climate it could be, and the water levels also. If organisms cannot adjust, so let us discuss this point now. So the changes in the environment, then their species will become extinct. So if an organism can't adjust to the changes in temperature, the rise in temperature, the downfall in temperature, the extremes of the climate, it could be snow, it could be rainy, or it could be whatever, a very dry weather climate. So still the organism can't adjust, the water levels also. So then the species will become extinct, means the species will become no more. You can't see the next generation of species at all. So these variations help these organisms to adjust in the changing environment. Okay, so if there are variations in some individuals of a species, then maybe they may be able to survive the changes in the environment. So these variations, the word variations is very, very important. But where is it happening? In the cell. Where in the cell? In the nucleus. Where in the nucleus? In the nucleolus, where chromosomes are present. So in the chromosomes, there are fragments of chromatin threads which are nothing but the genes. They code for each hereditary characteristics which comes from your parents. So during DNA copying mechanism, the body design, the whatever the shape of the body, the preliminary body design is kept the same. But there are slight different changes which are seen from generation 1 to the next generation, then to the next generation. So these variations, the changes which are produced during DNA copying mechanism are very, very important to survive in the changes in the environment. So variations in species is necessary for the survival of different species and for the evolution of new species. So these variations in different species, in all the species, it takes place not only in plants and animals also. So these variations in species is necessary for the survival of different species. So if the organism, if a particular kind of species has to live, has to survive, so then they have to adjust themselves in the changes which takes place in the environment. So that is related to temperature, climate, water, and all these things. And these variations also help in evolution of new species. So evolution is a slow and steady process which takes millions of years. It will not happen in 1 or 2 days. So the humans where we stand now, the way we look now, was not the same as the prehistoric era and all, right? So during the early stages of human beings, human life, Homo sapiens we call the scientific term. So we were not the same, right? So we didn't have an erect spinal cord. We were walking on four legs and four arms, and our skull was really huge, and our jawline was very big, and all these things and all, and we had a hairy body. So looking at that prehistoric Homo sapien, and now it's a lot of changes which has taken place. So these changes, how these changes happens? These changes happens during the DNA copying mechanism during reproduction. So the body design is being kept same, but you can see a lot of changes. Okay, so there comes an evolution of new species. Keeping the same body design, evolution of new species keeps on taking place. I hope you are understanding. If any doubts are there, you can comment in the comment box. And also if you want any new chapters or new topics to be explained, if you comment in the comment box, surely I'll take it up very seriously and I'm going to explain it for you all. So now the textbook reading is very, very important for everyone, because this NCERT textbook which comes same for the CBSE and the State Board of Karnataka. So let us look into this, what they are trying to explain. So sexual reproduction. So we are also familiar with modes of reproduction that depend on the involvement of two individuals before a new generation can be created. So in sexual reproduction, so how many parents are involved? We have discussed earlier, two parents are involved before a new generation can be created. This new generation is nothing but the offsprings, okay, the babies or the next generation. Bulls alone cannot produce new calves, nor can hens alone produce new chicks. So in such cases, both sexes, that is males and females, are needed to produce new generation. I hope you understood. The males and females both take part in the sexual mode of reproduction to produce the next generation. What is the significance of this sexual mode of reproduction? Are there any limitations of asexual mode of reproduction? So which we have been discussing about. So earlier I have told you the differentiation between asexual and sexual mode of reproduction, the oviparous, the viviparous, and the changes what takes place and all of that. So moving on next. Why the sexual mode of reproduction? So this is very important. So 5 mark answer to 3 mark, 2 mark you can expect from this. The creation of two new cells from one involves copying of DNA as well as of the cellular apparatus. So what are the cellular apparatus? So you can see that there are, if you look into the animal cell or a plant cell, you look into different organelles which are present. Mitochondria, it could be in a plant cell and an animal cell. So Golgi bodies, then endoplasmic reticulum, the vesicles, and all these things you see on in the cell. So the creation of two new cells from one involves copying of the DNA as well as of the cellular apparatus. So the DNA is also copied and the cell is also copied. So the DNA copying mechanism, as we have noted, cannot be absolutely accurate. I told you, right? So in a Xerox machine, when you put a paper, it comes exactly identical copy. But over here, during DNA copying mechanism, where it involves the two parents, so it cannot be very accurate. There are slightly changes which takes place. So and the resultant errors, so the resultant errors are nothing but the variations, are a source of variations in populations of organisms. So during DNA copying mechanism, it's not absolutely accurate. There are some resultant errors, because of which the production of variation, the source of variations it is in population of an organism. So every individual organism cannot be protected by variations. So you can't stop the variations happening, but in a population, variations are useful for ensuring the survival of the species. But where you can't stop the variations, but variations are useful for ensuring the survival of the species. So if a species has to survive many changes which takes place in temperature, it could be in climate, it could be, or it could be in different the water levels and all, so then these variations are very very useful for the survival of the species. It would therefore make sense if organisms came up with reproductive modes that allowed more and more variation to be generated. So organisms, if they come up with reproductive modes, if they have more and more variations, so then they can survive very appropriately. So while DNA copying mechanisms are not absolutely accurate, they are precise enough to make a generation of variation a fairly slow process. So they are not very accurate during the copying mechanism. It is not very accurate. There are slight changes which helps in the progress of the generation. If the DNA copying mechanism were to be less accurate, many of the resultant DNA copies would not be able to work with the cellular apparatus and they would die. So it should be a resultant DNA copies, if they were not able to work with the cellular apparatus. I told you, right, cellular apparatus, the different organelles in the cell. So then what would happen? They would die. Okay, so how can the process of making variants be speeded up? So how can you speed up this mechanism? Each new variation is made in a DNA copy that already has variations accumulated from previous generations. So our fathers, so our parents, like my mom and dad, they had the variations in their DNA which was previously accumulated in their generation, and in my generation there were some more changes, some more variations which has happened, and in my kids DNAs these variations will be continued, but some more variations will be added up. So only the species is still surviving. So each new variation is made in DNA copy that already has variations accumulated from previous generations. This is a very important point. So thus, two different individuals in a population would have quite different patterns of accumulated variations. So there are different patterns of variations which have been accumulated, which have been stored from our forefathers, from our fathers since many generations. Since all of these variations are in living individuals, it is assured that they do not have any really bad effects. So these variations are not a bad effect at all, but they help in the progress of generation while changes which takes place in the environment. Combining variations form two or more individuals that would thus create new combination of variants. So the combination of these variations from two or more individuals, two different individuals. So there are a new set of variations which will be seen. So each combination would be novel since it would involve two different individuals. The sexual mode of reproduction incorporates such a process of combining DNA from two different individuals during reproduction. So this incorporation of the different variations, so during the combining of DNA of two different individuals, the paternal and the maternal, during reproduction helps a lot, but this creates a major difficulty. So what is that? So if each new generation is to be the combination of DNA copies from two pre-existing individuals, then each new generation will end up having twice the amount of DNA. So if both have copies of DNA of two pre-existing individuals already, so then it will end up having twice the amount of DNA that the previous generation had. So this is likely to mess up the control of the cellular apparatus by the DNA. So if the number it's twice the amount of DNA, so then it is very difficult. So we have seen earlier that as organisms become more complex, the specialization of the tissues increases. So you can see there are different kinds of the tissues. In class 9 you have studied about the different kinds of tissues which are present in a body. So one solution that many multicellular organisms have found for the problem mentioned above is to have special lineages of cells in specialized organs in which only half the number of chromosomes and half the amount of DNA as compared to the non-reproductive body cells. So what happens here is, so the special cells which are present, so the cardiac cells, it could be the skeletal muscles or the tissues, it could be, so there are different kinds of specialized organs which are present. So there only half of the number of chromosomes and half the amount of DNA as compared to the non-reproductive body cells will be taken. So this is achieved by the process of cell division called meiosis. So the meiosis is also called as the reductional division of the cells. So thus when these germ cells from two individuals combine during the sexual reproduction to form a new individual, it results in re-establishment of the number of chromosomes and the DNA content in the new generation. So when these germ cells, so the germ cells, the male germ cell is the sperm, the female germ cell is the egg or the ova. So these two actually individuals combine during sexual reproduction to form what? To form a new individual, that is the zygote, the baby, a future embryo and all. So it results in re-establishment of number of chromosomes. So human beings, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and the DNA content of the new generation will be reduced a little bit where during the meiosis process. Okay, so if the zygote is to grow and develop into an organism which has highly specialized tissues and organs, see the zygote, see after fertilization, so the sperm and the ova, when it fuses actually, so then it is called as what? Zygote. Okay, so this zygote will grow and develop into an organism, we know that. So there they have specialized tissues and organs. So the organs and all will be started to form with the tissues and all, where the division of one cell will keep on taking place very high in number. Okay, 1 divided into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, like that. So then it has to have sufficient stores of energy for doing this. So in very simple organisms, it is seen that the two germ cells are not very different from one another, or they may be even similar also. But as the body design becomes more complex, the germ cells also specializes. So you can see the sperm, it has a head, it has a body, it has a tail. The ova is the circular part where it has the central yolk. Okay, so one germ cell is large and contains the food stores, while the other is smaller and likely to be motile. So the germ cell which is larger is the female germ cell, which contains the food stores. Okay, then the smaller and likely to be motile is the movement. You can see the movement in the germ cell. Which germ cell? The sperms. You can see it in the sperms. Conventionally, the motile germ cell is called the male gamete, the sperm, and the germ cell containing the stored food is called the female gamete, the egg or the ova. So we shall see in the next few sections how the need to create these two different types of gametes give rise to difference in males and female reproductive organs, and in some cases difference in the bodies of the male and the female organism. So I'll end up over here. So please read your textbook. If you have any doubts or any other topics which you need me to explain, please see to that you send the PDF format or the topics so that I can explain you. Please go through the video twice and read the textbook. Thank you.